So this week, we're going to look at the drivers of company performance. We're going to make a basic distinction between internal factors, which are company specific and a company usually has good control over, and external factors, which are things that are beyond the control of a single company. We're going to make a further distinction in external factors between industry specific factors and things beyond the industry. So let's start by looking at external factors beyond the industry. If you don't recognize this gentleman here, he's the founder of WhatsApp, and he's from the Ukraine originally. But instead of starting a business in Ukraine, he moved to the US, in part because the political and economic context are more favorable. Another unfortunate example of how external factors can influence business includes natural disasters. Here's an article on Hurricane Katrina that greatly impacted the New Orleans community. Those of you in Alaska probably are no stranger to weather events and how that might impact the way businesses operate. You certainly can't control the weather, but to a limited extent, you can control where you choose to do business. And to think about those decisions, I'd like to introduce the PESTLE framework. PESTLE is a simple framework that helps you to understand the external operating environment that a business faces. There are 6 broad categories, which we'll walk through briefly, but I provide a more detailed list of the kind of things that fall under each of these buckets on Blackboard. First of all, there's the political context. Things like political instability or upcoming elections would fall under the political bucket. Economic, the general standard of living in a market, whether the economy is growing, how are interest rates and inflation doing. The social context, especially when you're operating abroad or considering market entry decisions, it's important to understand the customs and accepted behaviors of the place that you're entering. The technological context, advances in production methodologies or changes in consumer habits can truly disrupt an industry. The legal context, especially in emerging markets, are you able to enforce contracts? Is your intellectual property protected? How will your employees be treated? For example, you probably couldn't send a woman to go run a business in Saudi Arabia without giving that plan a lot of thought. Finally, the ecological, or sometimes referred to as environmental bucket. This includes environmental regulatory standards and also resource availability. In certain industries that use rare earths, that actually becomes quite a big issue. When would PESTLE be a useful framework? When you're evaluating the performance of a business line and deciding whether to attribute performance to luck or skill. When you're planning for future resource allocations, in other words, making a decision where to put a factory or where to source material from. If you're evaluating trends and possible changes in consumer behaviors. If you're considering entry into a new geographic market or a new product market. Finally, if you're assessing the risks your business faces, most large businesses have a formal process for this. If you are working at a smaller business or have your own company, it's something you should think about doing regularly. And why use PESTLE? Because there are other models and frameworks you could apply in a number of these situations. The number one advantage of PESTLE is it's adaptable and easy to use.